Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by...
When Signs and Displays Direct was launched 15 years ago, it featured a complete line of banners and stands, product displays, and more. Today, the company is known as SDD and is the industry leader in turnkey, no-inventory POP programs. SDD has expanded into branding programs for both corporate and private label, as well as consulting services for retail showroom design and more. Visit sdd-us.com. That's sdd-us.com. All right, everybody, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and my guest tonight is Fee Waybill. Fee, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Michael.
You know, tell you what, I have been a fan of yours and the Tubes for many years, and I really looked forward to this because I've always found you to be an interesting guy because you seem like somebody who's got a lot of divergent interests.
I do.
And, so that's, what I wanted to, was looking forward to it because I know I want to touch on as many of those as we can. Okay. But the main thing I want to talk about is your new record.
Yes. Fee Waybill Rides Again.
Yeah. When I first saw the title, I had visions of you and Marlena Dietrich sitting, in the West, singing songs at the saloon.
It's kind of a lonesome cowboy kind of record. And, I was a cowboy. I actually was a real cowboy back before I started in the music business. I lived in northern Arizona in a little town called Cottonwood. And I worked for a cowboy named Dave Perkins. And I was a hippie. I moved away from I dropped out of Arizona State University and I moved up north because I just couldn't handle it. And I wanted to get away, and I got a job, and I lived with a bunch of hippies for a while on the side of a mountain, that got really boring really fast. And I heard that this guy was trying to find some people to work for him, and he was a young guy. He was a redneck cowboy, but he was progressive. I mean, I went to his place, and I had big hair. My hair was like out to here, and I said, hey, my dad was a riding instructor. I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we had horses when I was a little kid. I had horses all the way up until I left town at 18 to move to move out of my parents' house. And so I said, I can ride, I can do whatever you need me to do. And so I got a job, and I worked on Dave's ranch for about 2 years before I bailed out and moved to San Francisco with Roger and Prairie. So
was that like an impulsive decision, or was it something where you'd kind of been thinking, I really want to follow, because I'd heard you say before that you grew up in a musical household. Your mom was a singer, and there was an interesting story about how the touring musicianship worked back then.
Well, Roger and Prairie and another guy named Dave, they had a band in Arizona called the Red, White, and Blues Band, a trio, and they were good. They did original music, and the drummer, Prairie Prince, got a scholarship. He was an artist in high school, and he got a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute. And so they decided to move to San Francisco, and they had come up to the desert where I was. They actually played a friend. The other cowboy that worked for Dave Perkins was a guy named Mike Walker, and he got married to a woman that he met up there. And he wanted a band to play. And I asked them if they would come up and play for the wedding. And they did. They came up and played at Dave's ranch. And then after that, they said, we're going to move to San Francisco and we need help. We need a roadie. You want to be the roadie?
So your foray into the business was as the roadie for the band.
That's right. And I was kind of tired of being a cowboy riding. This guy, it was thankless. this guy, Dave Perkins, had a Forest Service lease for 250,000 acres in the desert of northern Arizona. And there was so little food for the cows to eat that they limited him to 150 cows, mother cows. And so spring and fall, you got to go out on 250,000 acres and try and find 150 cows to round up. And man, and I would sleep out there, and they would show up with a truck full of food. And I mean, after a couple of years, I kind of thought, I can't do this anymore. I gotta. And when they asked me to move to San Francisco, drive the truck, they want me to drive the truck. We had a big Divco milk truck, a milk delivery truck with like sliding doors. And so we put all the equipment in there, and I drove it to San Francisco, and I started as the roadie.
Wow. Now, how did you work your way up from roadie to lead singer?
Well, it was a process, as they say. I guess I was a roadie for about maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and then we used to do gigs up there, and then when we would run out of money, we'd go back to Arizona because they were pretty well known in Phoenix, and so we'd go back there to do a gig to get some money. Basically, we were living, 5 of us, Roger and Prairie and David and me and our manager John. We lived on $150 a month, and Prairie's uncle Marshall, gave him $150 a month, as a stipend to get through art school. And so, I was also the cook. And so we would go to the farmer's market every week, and we'd buy food by the bulk. We'd buy 25-pound bag of brown rice and a big bag of pinto beans and a big, can of government cheese. And so when we got low on money, we'd go back to Arizona, and we would tell everybody how great San Francisco was. And we were, and another band, Bill Spooner's band, the Beans, they decided, well, we're moving up there too. And so they did. They moved to San Francisco, and about, I guess it was maybe mid-71 or so, or later, Roger and Prairie fired the bass player, David. He mostly sat around and smoked hash all day. And and rehearsal was at the house, in the basement, in the garage, and he couldn't make that. And he lived in the garage. And so they just said, okay, we're done. We're going to try to find another bass player. So they kicked him out, and they started auditioning bass players, and we put ads in the Haight-Ashbury Free Press, and we couldn't find anybody. And in the meantime, they would still rehearse. Roger and Prairie would rehearse, and I would go down and sing. Dave was the lead singer. So I would go down, and because I knew all the songs, so I'd go down and sing his parts, and we would practice. And so the Beans manager, his name was Lauren Thompson. He and John decided, well, let's merge the bands together. It'll be an Arizona supergroup. And so they did. Roger and Prairie joined Bill's band. Bill had a quartet, Vince Welnick, Rick Anderson, and the drummer and Bob, his name was, and Bill. And so Roger and Prairie joined them. And so they had 2 guitar players and 2 drummers. And I was kind of left out because they already had 3 guys acting as roadies. But Roger was kind enough to say, he's a pretty good singer. He could be like the background singer. And okay, so you can be the background singer. So I became the background singer, and I sang too loud. They were always mad at me. They said, "You sing too loud, man. You're the background singer." I said, "Well, I can't help it. What am I going to do?" And so finally they said, "Okay, well, you can sing this song." And we wanted to do, we had the theatrical bent from the very beginning. I was a theater major in high school and college, and Prairie was an artist, and so we actually joined the band as the Radar Men from Uranus, and we would do like tinfoil antennae and mylar spacesuits. And Bill had an overture, or an opus, I guess, called "The Ascension of the Motherlode," and it was like a space oddity, like in Spinal Tap. And so Bill's band, the deal was he would do like 30 minutes of their original material. Then he'd bring on the Radar Men from Uranus, and we'd do Ascension of the Motherlode, and with the spacesuits on. And so, and that's kind of how the theatrical things all started. And then one day I said, I used to do this bit when I was actually in 6th grade. I used to do assemblies, and I had this bit where I would sing this song, "Please, Mr. Custer," and I don't want to go. And in the end of the song, the guy singing gets shot, and I would do this stiff back fall back onto my back, and everyone thought that was great. So I said, let's do a cowboy song, and I'll wear my cowboy suit. I had chaps and a hat, and we did El Paso by Marty Robbins. And in El Paso, there's a line where the guy gets shot, and right. You hear the shot. And so I would take a Ziploc bag and put stage blood in it and put it underneath my shirt. And then when the guy got shot, I would slap the thing, and blood would squirt all over my face in the front row. And I was just, and everyone loved it. Oh, great. That was, and so then we that kind of got the ball rolling on theatrics. And then it just, got completely out of control. And it went on and on and on and on. And it still goes on today. I still wear Quaaludes boots that are 18 inches high.
Well, I was going to ask you, are you wearing them now?
I'm not, actually. I'm in the backyard, and they don't do very well on grass.
I wouldn't think. Yeah, the terrain looks a little tough for the boots.
So we just so it all developed from there. We found Kenny Ortega when he was completely unknown, and he is just a brilliant guy. And Kenny kind of coalesced everything into, we found these girls, actually there was a comedy troupe called Leela and the Snakes, and it was Jane Dornacker and 3 girls who were strippers, and on Broadway in San Francisco, and they had this kind of comedy show, and did little clubs, and we saw them in a little club, and we kind of added them to the mix, and Kenny would choreograph it all into this kind of massive plethora of freak out theater and bondage, and it was just unbelievable. And Daisy, no digging holes, sorry.
She's just trying to expand her cameo fee.
Yeah, really. No digging holes, okay? So it kind of just, it morphed from there into the Tubes, and we finally got an album deal at A&M, and we started making records and touring, and here we are today. Gosh, how we're looking at, it'll be in 2 years, it'll be 50 years, which is,
isn't that amazing?
Unbelievable. I don't even know what to think of that. Of course, hopefully in 2 years we'll be back on the road celebrating that. And but so anyway, while we're I started making, I met this guy named Richard Marx back in 83, when we were doing a record with David Foster, when we were doing Completion Backward Principle. And Richard was just a young kid from Chicago. his father, Dick Marks, was a jingle writer. And so Richard was a keyboard player and had his father wrote Double Mint Gum, okay? Double your pleasure. And he wrote My Dog's Better Than Your Dog, My Dog's Kennel Ration. He wrote all these incredible jingles. And he was also this really great jazz keyboard player and pretty popular around the Chicago area.
Oh, absolutely.
And so Richard was very, he was young, and he managed to place a song on a Lionel Richie album. He sent the guy a song, and Lionel Richie said, okay. And he did the song, and Richard came to LA to watch him record it. And while he was there, he said, I really think a lot of this producer, David Foster, any way I could meet him. And Lionel knew him, and Lionel knew that he's down the street in the studio doing the Tubes. And he goes, yeah, he's down the street in the studio doing this band called the Tubes. And Richard, in the Tubes. Oh, so he was a big fan of my lyrics, unbeknownst to me. And so Richard showed up at the studio one day while we're recording, and just sat in the back of the room and watched, and at the end of the session, he asked me, he said, would you write a song with me? And I said, yeah, okay, I'll write a song with you. And I didn't know who he was. And, so we wrote a song. And we wrote a song that was on my first solo album called Who Loves Ya Baby, which was, the Telly Savalas tagline.
Right.
From Kojak. And so it was on my first Read My Lips, my first solo album in '84. And then we just became friends and, wrote songs together. And at that time, he was just a songwriter, and we were writing songs to place with other artists, and which we did. And so we've stayed friends and got, Richard has no siblings. So he always kind of thought of me as his big brother. And I kind of thought of him as my little brother, and we just became very, very close. And, he got married and he had sons, and I'm the godfather to his sons, the Marx brothers. And we've just been very close over all these years. And we started this record, my latest solo record, Fee Waybill Rides Again. We started this in 2013. And we wrote that first song on the album Faker. And I used to go to, he lived in Chicago, or outside Chicago, up in Lake Forest, north of Chicago. He actually grew up in Highland Park. And so we used to, when the boys were young, we used to take a boys' trip every summer. And his dad had a cabin up in Wisconsin, Minocqua, Wisconsin. And I would go to Chicago, and we'd get in the car, and the three boys and Richard and I would drive to Minocqua, and we'd just do a week of boy stuff. And we would, we would curse, and we would go fishing, and we would go horseback riding, and we would drive go-karts, and we would, just, there's my dog in the background walking across. And so we did that for years and years. And when the boys were young, and as they got older and older, finally I showed up in the summer of 2013, and they didn't want to go. They wanted to go see their girlfriend, or they wanted to go to the movies, or
they had aged out.
They aged out of the trip to Minocqua. And so Richard said, well, let's go to the studio and write a song. And the studio was right there at his house. And so we did. And we wrote Faker. And he thought, gosh, this is really cool, and it's really guitar, really kind of an 80s classic rock sound, guitar oriented rock song. And we said, well, let's do a record. Okay. And so right around that time, we did four, kind of in the next year or so, we did four songs. We did Faker, Promised Land, Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, and How Dare You. We got four songs done. And then we just and then we stopped the whole thing. I mean, life happened. Richard got divorced. he moved to California. I went on the road. The Tubes started touring more and more and more, and 80s music became popular. And so we were working like crazy. And those 4 songs just sat in the can for 5 years and 6 years until last year, until the summer of 2019. And now Richard lives here now in California, so we see each other a lot more. And he said, let's get this done. Okay, let's just finish it off here. Let's write some songs and finish it. Okay, and it's about time. And I said, okay, great. And so we started looking around for songs. We wrote 3 more songs, and there were 2 other songs. Say Goodbye was a song that I wrote for Richard years ago, and he never put it on a record. It kept getting bumped off of records because he had other ballads, and I always loved the song. And I said, Richard, let's just delete your lead vocal, and I'm going to put my vocal on there. I love this song. I want to do this song. He said, okay, fine. And so we did that. And then the other song that I didn't write, actually, Still You on the Inside, was a song that Richard and Chad Kroeger from Nickelback wrote for Daughtry, and for a Chris Daughtry album. And Daughtry didn't want to do the song. And Richard sent me the song. He said, "What?" He said, "Don't you like this song?" And I said, "Yeah, I love this song." And I played it again and again and again and again. And he said, "Well, they're not going to do it." And I said, "Well, okay, I want to do it." And so that was another song where, and I, Chad had done the vocal on the demo, and Chad is, my God, he's brilliant. The guy is just an incredible singer. And I thought, gosh, I don't know. And I was a little apprehensive, and, and Richard, same thing. He goes, "Man, this song's really high, man. And you think you can beat Chad's vocal?" And I just went, well, no, I don't, but it'll be my vocal. And I know I can sing the notes, and I really want to do it. So we did it, and that made the album. And then the other songs we wrote, Don't Want to Pull the Trigger and Meant to Be Alone, and Man of the World we wrote new, and the Don't Want to Pull the Trigger. And actually, it was Elizabeth's idea to put the little demo line, where Richard says, "I'm going to play this on, I can't really play the lead guitar, I'm going to play it on acoustic," and then the chorus and the verse. And she said, "Oh, that's so cute. Why don't you put that as the intro to the song?" And I said, "Well, it's a demo, and I think it's even in the wrong key." And but we have this brilliant engineer guy, Matt Prock, and he's a young engineer from Chicago. And Richard said, "Well, let's send it to Matt and see if he can figure out how to make this work." And we did. And Matt is brilliant, and he did. He's figured out how to make it. That's actually, my favorite song on the record. And so it all kind of came together, and it came together early this year. We spent the second half of last year working on it and doing sessions and mixing and mastering and getting art together for the CD package. I know nobody, the digital download doesn't have the art. Obviously, it only has the cover, but the CD is brilliant. And I put all the lyrics in there. There's a lyric book, and Prairie Prince from the Tubes, my favorite artist, did the art for me. There's the dog. Right.
We're going to have to give Daisy credit.
Yeah, she's going crazy on the hill. She loves that grass. And so Prairie did the art for me. And oh, Daisy, what are you eating now? What do you? Oh, it's a stick. It's okay. It's just a stick. So we got it together. I mean, and it was all ready to go. And we even had, we had a plan to do a live show. I've never done a live solo show. I've always only been the Tubes. And Richard said, well, there's a little theater in LA called the Coronet Theater. And the guy who owns it is a friend or runs it, and comedians mostly work there. And Sarah Silverman and Greg Proops and all these comedians. It's a small theater. It's like a 250 seater. And I asked, Richard said, well, why don't you ask Mike? That's the guy who owns it, Mike Flanagan. And he said, ask him if we could do a gig there. And, you can use my band. I will do it with you. I'll sing background vocals with you. I'll play guitar. We'll get Matt Scannell from Vertical Horizon, who played on the record also, who's a good friend of ours. Matt will play, and we'll do a gig. And I said, okay. And I talked to Mike, and he said, okay, yeah, no problem. We'll do it in May. Oh, great.
Well, as they say, timing is everything.
Yeah, timing is everything. That didn't happen. That's not going to happen. But I even considered, well, maybe we shouldn't release this. The music business is completely shut down. And I said, but no, that's the perfect thing. People want something. They're quarantining. They're listening to all their records, and this was new music, so it's something new. And so we decided to go ahead anyway and release. And I put it on Amazon and all those digital sites and iTunes and everything, and made CDs so you can actually get a CD if you still have a CD player. I don't. Now I don't in my car, but I have an old one at home. And
I think there's enough old school people like myself,
who
still like having something tangible.
Right.
And as I've said many times on this show, I'm a liner note junkie. So God bless you for putting the lyrics and everything in there.
Yeah, it's got all the players on every song, even the players that played, 7 years ago. It's got everybody on there. And I've got some, oh my God, there's some great players. There's some great Josh Freese from 9 Inch Nails, and Matt Scannell, and all of Richard's bands, Why Not, and Brian and Jay, they all play on it. And Michael Landau, Slick, is like the guitar god of the LA studio world. And so it's got a lot of good players. And you can actually, if you have a CD player, you can find it at feewaybill.com or thetubes.com. And so I'm glad I did. I'm glad I put it out, and everybody, it seems to be getting really a great response. And I'm really happy that I did, and I'm really proud of it. And I hadn't done a record. Gosh, the last solo record I did was 97 or something.
96, actually.
96.
In fact, I was gonna ask you. I was gonna say, well, when you look at your solo career, you had one in 84,
right?
You had one in 96, and then 2020. So at this rate,
if
you follow the pattern you've established, Fee, we won't get another record from you until you're either 106 or 118 years old.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I hope not.
Somebody, I just read somebody, who was it? Somebody's mother lived to be 108 or something. I just, gosh, I can't remember who it was, but I just talked to an old friend of mine from Santa Cruz just yesterday, and I hadn't talked to him in 10 years. And Tom, his name was, and he goes, yeah, my dad just died. And I said, oh, Tom, I'm sorry. He goes, yeah, he was 101. What? Whoa. So, although I don't think I'm going to wait that long. I'm Richard, when we finished the record, Richard said, let's not wait 22 years before we do another one. Okay, let's do one in like a couple of years. So I said, okay, well, no problem. Let's do that.
Well, I'll tell you, I've listened to it quite a bit. And the two things struck me immediately. One, this album rocks.
Absolutely. I mean, that it is definitely a throwback.
Yeah.
It's a throwback. A lot of guitar-oriented rock songs.
Yeah, you're not going to, listen to this and then fall asleep by any means. This is not a relaxing disc. This is a, an exciting fun. Fun is the, the other thing that I noticed, the vocals. Your vocals sound as good as what they did many years ago.
Oh, thank you.
And, and being realistic, by the time we get to, as you get older, the voice usually declines. Especially, it's very rare when you find a singer who's been using their voice constantly as a tool for decades, where the voice hasn't diminished a fair amount. When you listen to this record, you sound like you're in your 30s.
Well, thank you for that. I really am blessed with a great voice. Like you mentioned earlier, my mother was a singer, and my mother, before she got married, she lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and she sang. She was like the go-to singer in Omaha for big bands. She sang with Duke Ellington when they came to town, and that's when the big band would come to town, they would call my mother, and she would go sing all the standards, Begin the Begin, and all those kind of songs.
Wow.
And so we always, from an early age, we always had music, and we always sang in the house. And we used to buy Broadway soundtrack albums and sing and sing and sing again and again and again. And so I've always been really grateful for my voice and for my mother's genes. And I actually, I have to say, I went to Scottsdale High, and back then, we had an unbelievable theater arts department. We had a huge auditorium and a giant 60 by 40 stage with wings. And we had theater arts classes where you would go and learn about theater arts and learn to build sets. And we had a group called the Scottsdale Singers. And regressing a little, we used to do theater. We used to do plays every year. We'd usually do 2 or 3 musicals and 1 dramatic play. And so from the very beginning, I was on the stage in high school, and the director of the theater department was a guy named Joe Esley, and he was brilliant. And we had this group of singers called the Scottsdale Singers, and it was a group of about 40 men and women, about 10 soprano, 10 alto, 10 tenor, 10 bass. And it was a varsity group, right? It was like a junior and senior type of varsity group. And one of the Broadway soundtrack albums that we bought back in, gosh, it had to be 67, 66, was West Side Story. And I loved that album, and I knew every song on West Side Story. And so the year before, the summer before my freshman year of high school, they had auditions for this. They had a freshman singing group, like the Freshman Singers, it was called, and the Scottsdale Singers, which was the varsity singing group. But they had auditions the summer before, and mainly because you're all freshmen, and mainly for the freshman group. And so I wanted to do it. And so I auditioned singing Maria from West Side Story a cappella. And Joe was there, along with Mr. Valentine Debs Valentine was the teacher of the freshman group. And Joe was so impressed that I was put into the varsity group as a freshman. And I was the first guy ever to be put in the Scottsdale Singers.
That's pretty impressive.
And this guy was so incredible. And I dedicated our first album to him the first Tubes album because he just changed my life. And we used to do this, like Handel's Messiah is like a 50-page vocal, opus. It's unbelievable. And we used to do Bach and all of these incredibly intricate classical pieces. And we used to go to the state competition and compete against other singing groups around the state of Arizona. And we won it 2 or 3 times. But I remember one day, I'll never forget it. He used to give me like, you can do the area, the tenor area on Handel's Messiah on this song or on that song. And, and I used to really, I really worked hard at it, and, harder than sports. And, although I was a baseball player. My dad started Little League in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I was a baseball player. And I got beat out my freshman year. I was a first baseman, okay? And I was a right-handed first baseman, which is not good. You baseball fans will understand.
So you're a bit of a disadvantage, yeah.
Right. You're supposed to be left-handed for first base. And so I wanted to play I had played baseball my whole life up to that point. And so I auditioned for the freshman baseball team and tried out, and I got beat out at first base by a short, fat, left-handed kid. And it just crushed me. I couldn't believe it. And so I said, "Oh, that's it. I'm quitting sports." And so then theater arts just became my whole world. And the jocks hated us. They used to call us fine arts fairies, and the jocks would wait until after school to beat us up. And we had long hair because the Beatles, it was early 60s, and the Beatles just came out. So everybody wanted to have not everybody, but not the jocks.
Right.
But I wanted to have long hair, so I had long hair, and there was a rule at school that your hair couldn't touch the collar of your shirt. If you did, you were suspended. So my hair was like right above the collar, and the jocks would wait after school to beat us up because we had long hair. But I would never go because I would stay in the theater arts department till like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And but one day, he used to always single me out, Mr. Esley, and go, "Okay, you did this wrong. You did this wrong. You did do this." And so I remember one day walking into his office, and I sat down and I said, "Mr. Esley, why? You are always on my case. Why are you always on me? I'm trying so hard." And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, "You have a gift, and you have something special, and I am not going to let it slide." And there's a quote: if God gives you a gift, it's your job to share it with the world. And my gift, I'm so grateful for Joe Esley. And he said, "I'm not going to let you. You're gonna take this gift, and it's gonna change your life." And I just kind of went, okay, I guess so. And then that's why in 1975, I dedicated my portion of the first Tubes album to Joe Esley. And I went back to Arizona, and he lived in Scottsdale, and I hadn't, this was, I graduated in 68 or something. And so it was 6, 7, 8 years later. And I found out where he lived, and I wanted to go, and I went there. I took a record, and I went with me to the house, and I wanted to show Mr. Esley that I did, you meant so much to me, and I dedicated the record to you. And I got there, and his son opened the door, and I told him who I was, and I told him, I want to give this to your dad. And he said, "My dad died of cancer just like 4 months ago."
Oh.
And I just kind of went, "Oh my God, that's so sad." And I said, "Well, he meant a lot to me, and I think he changed my life. And here's the record, here's the record. But so anyway, it's
It had to make his family feel wonderful, though.
oh yeah, he had a smart young son who I stayed in contact with for a while. He kind of became a Tubes fan and would come to see us when we played Arizona. And but all those years, I'm doing a book. My wife and I are putting together a book of my life. And, all of my mother used to keep all of the clippings and, the Playboy and the magazines and everything. And when my mother died in 2004, we went to the house, and in the closet, I find like 5 boxes full of reviews and newspapers. And I didn't know she was saving all this stuff. And so I took it all home. And so we're putting together this book. And it's got a lot of posters and pictures and stories, and it's called Fee Waybill's Guide to an Unknown Trail. Once again, the lonesome cowboy theme.
I was going to say, you can't escape that cowboy thing, can you?
Really. And so I'm looking at old itineraries, right, that of touring, because we used to go out after our first record came out in 75. We would go out every year on tour. Pretty much, we'd make a record in the early part of the year. April, you go out on the road, and you spent the entire year on the road till like Thanksgiving in a bus. And I saw some of those old itineraries, and we were doing like 10, 12 nights in a row in different cities. And I can't even conceive of how I could have done that. And right now, today or last year, 3 or 4, that was it. I can do 4 in a row. That's it.
Youth is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, really. But what I did was, and I think really helped save my voice, because people who work that hard, they get nodes and they have to have surgery, and, they lose their voice. And a lot of bands, lower the key of all of those high songs because they can't hit the note. We have never had to do that. But I used to go to acupuncture. And if I was starting to strain, if I felt like I was starting to lose my high notes, I would roll into a city, get the phone book out, and find acupuncture. And I would make an appointment that day. And while the band's doing sound check at the gig, I'm at the acupuncture place, laying on the bench with needles stuck right into my vocal cords. They stick the needle right into your vocal cord, and like, spin it around. And sometimes they connect electrodes to it and put like a low voltage charge through it. And it was miraculous. I don't know. I can't think of a word. Unbelievably miraculous. And I would walk in there after doing, 5, 6, 7 nights in a row, and I couldn't even talk. I couldn't make a high note. I was mute. And I would walk out of there singing like a bird. It was unbelievable. And it was truly, and I did this through all those years. We toured every single year from 75 all the way through like 86, 87, every year. Leave in April, watch the Kentucky Derby on TV, and go on tour
and head on out
until Thanksgiving. And so I've never had a problem. I've never had nodes. I've never had any kind of a vocal problem, and I'm so grateful that I can still hit all those high notes. And the other thing I have to say is Richard Marx knows me inside and out, and no one has ever got vocals out of me like Richard. And when we were doing this record, he has this intuition about me and about what I can do and what I can't do. And when that's the take, that's it. Okay, go on, next line. And, especially today with the technology and Pro Tools and everything, you can do 8-10 takes and then go through them and pick each line that you want, and then comp them all together into, it's funny. I did a Mix magazine. Mix magazine did a big story, and it's just coming out now, on the song "White Punks on Dope," about how that was such an anthem and such a classic, and that song. They interviewed everybody. They interviewed Al Cooper, who produced the record, and Lee Kiefer, and everybody in the band, and it's a really comprehensive article. It's really good. And Al Cooper has a quote in it. He said, "Fee has such a strong voice, he could sing through the walls of a battleship." And that song, and White Punks, I mean, obviously in 1975, you didn't have Pro Tools. You didn't have anything.
Oh, no.
It was all analog, and it was all, if you wanted to, fly something in or fix something, you had to go back and do it all over again. You couldn't stop and then take this little piece and stick it over here. And so I did that. I did White Punks on Dope. The final vocal I did in one take. And
Wow.
and I'll never forget it. I did it in one take, and Al was in the studio, and he went, "Okay, that's it." And I went, "What, you want me to do again?" And he goes, "No, that's it. We're done." And, so anyway, that's, if you see Mix online, that's a good story to read, and it talks about how we did it and all the players, and really nice complimentary quote by Al. So I'm lucky. I can sing, man. I love to sing, and I sing all the time. I always sing. Richard has a new record out too called Limitless, and I always he's my warm up when I go to a gig, and I'm in the hotel room before we're heading out to sound check. I get my phone out and put in headphones and listen to an old Richard record. I know every lyric and every melody on every song he ever did. And so I just warm up that way, because our voices are kind of the same kind of range. We kind of have the same octave range, although he can sing higher than I can. The guy's brilliant. And I tend to sing a little sharp, sometimes. Sometimes in the studio, I tend to sing sharp, or sometimes at a gig, I'll always, and I don't use in-ears. I don't like them, and in-ear monitors. And I always have floor monitors, but I'll always put in a little bit of Roger's guitar or a little bit of Dave's keyboard just to keep me on pitch, so I don't sing sharp. But when we're in the studio, sometimes recording, I sing a little bit sharp, and Richard he can hear it instantly. And the guy he's got such perfect pitch. It's ridiculous. And he'll just go, "Okay, take your right headphone off and slip it back just like a half an inch off of your ear, so you can hear in the headphones, and you can also hear your voice from singing." And he goes, "Oh, okay, that's it." And then that fixes it. Then also I'm singing perfect, or singing on pitch, and nothing's perfect. But I don't know. I had a great time doing the record, and it was so fun and so easy. And like I said, there's such great players on it, and so anyway, it's been great.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time. For Music Night at the Majestic, this is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.